evening for everyone. I'm in Mumbai, and it's around 8 p.m. over here. So I want to get started with the session on Scrum in a nutshell. I'm given that we are going to be talking about Scrum, I can talk on it for a couple of days, maybe even an entire week. So shrinking it down to 1 hour, and that to accommodating the Q&A session, will be a little bit challenging. Let's see how we do. My goal is to give you just enough information so that it starts with more and more questions, and we can spend at least about 20 to 25 minutes on the Q&A stuff. So the agenda for today, I'll just briefly introduce myself. We are going to talk about the challenges that we have in our software delivery, and I want to do a little bit of comparative analysis between what is predictive approach for software delivery versus empirical approach. We'll go into the essence of Scrum. Then we do a little bit of deeper dive on the Scrum framework itself. And I'll also shed some light why Scrum is so difficult to master. If you look at the rules of Scrum, they are pretty straightforward, but it's always challenging when it comes to the actual implementation. So that's the agenda for today. Briefly about myself, I'm a Scrum.org licensed trainer, and I conduct a lot of workshops related to PSM, Advanced Professional Scrum Master, or PSM Level 2. I do conduct Agile Leadership Workshop as well, and I'm also anything and everything got to do with Scrum. I'm pretty much there in terms of the training stuff. My profile is basically split between training and doing hands-on coaching. So about 60 to 70% of the time, you'll find me working with my clients, helping them in their transformation. And the other 30 to 40% of the time, I'm here conducting workshops and webinars to share my thoughts on what I have learned so far. I have overall of about 20 years of IT experience, and uh, in that I have worked with more than 10 to 12 years with different banks. I've worked with JP Morgan and Chase, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America. Recently, I worked with IDFC First Bank. I've also been engaged with Boston Consulting Group for a few of their clients, and on and off, I keep working with them for the agile transformation for different domains. So far, I have worked in banks, banking and financial. I have worked with insurance companies. I have worked with oil and gas companies. Right now, I am working with cancer research organization, helping them with their agile transformation. I'm passionate about it, and that's why you will find me in a lot of forum discussing how to take the next steps. If people need any assistance, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is there in front of you. Just let me know if there is any way in which I can help. Right. So that's a brief about myself, and let's get going. Let's talk about our software delivery. What are the typical challenges that we all face in delivery, right? So in most of my workshop, I always ask my students, like, okay, can you just quickly call out the kind of challenges that you are facing in your delivery? And when we do that, this is the word cloud that I get. A lot of it would be surrounding these words. It may be some people-related issues, something got to do with the skill set, the domain knowledge, the requirements, the client buy-in. We are talking about not being able to do good amount of planning, uh, some dysfunction within the team. So this is just a broad view from about, I would say, a 7 to 8 workshop that I ran. I just took a dump of those words and prepared this cloud. And these are typical challenges that we all face. At least few of them you would be able to recognize. And if I were to just bundle them up, I would list it at something like this. One of the challenges we face is the scope of our project keeps changing, right? We call it scope creep. We call it like, hey, the requirements are now changing a lot. They did a survey about this, and the survey states on an average, 35% of the times the requirements change in most of the projects. That's on an average. In some projects, it would be a lot more. In some projects, it may be a little less, but it's always there, right? The requirements keep changing, and there are multiple reasons behind it. One can be the marketplace condition, the market conditions may have changed, right? And that's why your requirements may need to be changed. The other thing I can always think of is we are working in an industry where we are building something intangible, something about software. We know we need to recognize that we are building something which we cannot see at the moment, and when that happens, um, we make a lot of assumption like, hey, we would like to see something like this happening, we would like to see something like that happening. It's only when you start seeing the app or the software that you have built, you are like, oh man, is this how it's going to look like? That's not going to work for me. And that's one of the reasons why our requirements keep evolving, right? And you can't blame it. It's very easy to pass the buck on to the business, saying like, hey, you know what? These buggers, they don't understand the requirement. They don't understand things. They don't know what they want. Well, I have some news for you. It's it, it it would be sad if we blame them, right? You can't pass the buck entirely on them. That's the hazard that we are carrying. The other part we talk about is stakeholder engagement. A lot of times, you do not see, what do you call it, the trust being there between your client and the vendor, or the business and the technology teams. And that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of friction going on, a lot of push and pull. So cross-team collaboration, this is especially when you have a larger organization where you have a more than like 30, 40, maybe even 100 teams, 100 team members working together in smaller teams. Cross-team collaboration challenges. The next thing we are talking about, our plans might be inaccurate, right? I don't want to go into all the details over here. We are talking about conflicting priorities within the organization, within the department. Now we are talking about natural calamities, right? Well, just imagine about 4 months back, we didn't think that COVID-19 would be impacting us so much. And a lot of organizations were thrown off guard, and projects were derailed because of that. So if I want to just quickly call out, here are some of the things that can affect the outcome of your projects or the success of your project. The ones that I have highlighted with asterisks are the ones either they are not in your control, either 100% not in your control, or you can control them to very limited degrees, right? We talk about estimates. Our estimates are inaccurate. Well, estimates are estimates. They are called estimates because this is something that we are guessing based on our knowledge right now, and they may not be accurate at times. So because of that, our plans can become a little haywire, right? So these are typical challenges, and if I were to roll them up into a higher level, I would see something like this, right? Just three axes. One is your requirements, the second is the technology, and the third one is people, right? When it comes to requirements, if your requirements are nailed down, hammered down upfront itself, they are very close to agreement, nothing's going to change. We all know exactly what we are supposed to be doing. We are somewhere here. When your requirements change a lot, you are somewhere here, meaning requirements are changing frequently and you are pulling your hairs, you are here somewhere. When it comes to technology, if everything related to technology that you are using, the tools that you are using, you are talking about the infrastructure that you are using, if everything is known to the team, the skill set, if everything is hammered down and you know that this technology is perhaps best suited for these requirements, you are somewhere over here. And if there is some bit of unknowns in the technology that, hey, the team members may not have some skill set, the team members may, or some part of the technology is not built for this particular problem, you are somewhere here, and the more further away, the more your technology is unknown to you. To give you a little example on this, right? About 5 to 6 years back, we didn't even know about the blockchain that much. We never heard of it. We didn't know that AI and machine learning can play such a pivotal role in a lot of industry. Even the technology is evolving over time. You talk about the code that we are writing. within a matter of couple of years, the code that we are writing becomes legacy code that not just you, but someone who's joining the team would be a little scared to touch, right? So even that changes over time. And then we have the third factor, which is people within the team, people supporting the team, people who may be in your client side, whoever, anyone whose skin is in the game, you will put over here, like if they behave. So if everything is known upfront, you are in simple domain, right? The people are going to behave exactly how you want them to behave. The requirements are nailed down upfront. You are in simple domain. If things change, like some bit of things are unknown to you, but majority of stuff is known to you, right? In that case, you entered the next domain, which is complicated, where you have more knowns and fewer unknowns. And then you have complex domain where things evolve a lot. There are a lot more unknowns than knowns. Your requirement might change frequently, right? And then there's chaos. Chaos is where you have nothing known. The way I think about it is how often are we in a situation where we have entered the office and it's almost like your team has been hit by a speeding train out of nowhere, and the team members like, what, things are going wrong, the server's down, we try to bring the server back up, things are it's not just recycling, nothing's working out. Most likely that point you are in chaos domain, right? If I were to move back to the previous slide, if we look at the variables over here, we are talking about legacy code, we are talking about conflicting priorities, external dependencies, the risk that you are not aware of or you cannot mitigate, unplanned leaves, all these things, market conditions are evolving. If you look at those things, you most likely, I would say, you are in complex domain. You know little, and based on that, we are taking decisions right now. And in complex domain, your traditional way of working where you do a detailed planning upfront and you stick to the plan most likely will fumble you. You are up for some challenges over here. If you are in simple or complicated domain where majority of things are known to you and working out beautifully for you, I tell you what, your waterfall upfront detailed planning will work beautifully. You do not need to worry about stuff. But if you go beyond that, because I'm sure all of us, we have been through projects where we have done detailed planning and we have those Gantt charts which we stick to, and you have seen that as the project moves forward, the lines in the Gantt chart just keep slipping towards the right, and things are like, oh yeah, we have to still stick to the deadline. Most likely in such situation, you are not over here, you are over here, you are in complex domain. So over here in simple and complicated waterfall ways of working where you do detailed planning will work beautifully. Complex is where you apply Scrum. Whenever you are dealing with complex problem, your problems might be changing, right? In such situations, Scrum works beautifully. And if you are in chaos, most likely I would suggest this. You may want to employ Kanban. Just try to get things done end to end as quickly as possible, right? So why does Scrum work? I want to tell you something. Scrum is not predictive in approach. It is more empirical in approach, right? When it comes to predictive approach, which is what we do in Waterfall, we do detailed planning upfront and stick to the plan. You predict the future and you make it work. So you do upfront itself, you do the planning, and then you just execute the plan, right? Great. It works fine for a simple or complicated domain where you can get your arms around things. And you think that, hey, your initial information, your assumptions, everything are going to stay valid throughout the horizon of the project, right? Throughout the project. You follow the predetermined steps. Great. That's waterfall. Now, when it comes to empirical, you are not going to predict the future. You adapt to the future as things evolve, as more things become known, you take decisions based on that. So being empirical in your approach is basically taking decisions based on our experience, what our facts point to. Hey, if our facts are pointing to these things, do you think our original plan will work? If not, we better adjust our plan, right? So adapting to the future. So when it comes to empirical approach, you want to frequently inspect and adapt rather than do detailed planning and sticking to it. What do we mean by frequently inspect and adapt? As often as possible, gather your facts. as more facts are with you, you would take more informed decisions, right? So we talk about probing, like first you run a small experiment to gather some facts about it. And once you have it in ground, you look at the facts and then you take decisions on what can be done, right? So now how Scrum works is basically you plan, do, plan, do. You keep frequently planning and acting on it. You replan again, you act on it, and you continue working in this model. This is empirical approach. Now let's talk about what uh, Scrum is founded on. As I said, Scrum is based on empirical approach or empirical process control theory. Um, think about it this way: how many of us lie to our managers when we are in deep red zone sometimes, right? Your project is not going well, and when you are talking to your colleagues, you might be just even laughing at like, you know what, we are going to go through a hell of a challenge. I know we are going to have a lot of difficulty soon. But the same question when your manager asks, like, hey, how's the project coming along? You would be answering, oh, things are fine, right? Basically, this is an indicator that you don't trust your manager, and maybe your manager doesn't trust you because no one wants to be the bearer of bad news, right? So let's think about it this way. For Scrum to work, number one, you have to start building some trust. Once you have trust between the team members, between the leadership, between the client and leadership and the team members, if you have that, at least some bit of trust that, hey, you know what, we know people are trying to do their best. It's okay if we get the bad news up front. In that case, once you have trust, you will start bringing in all important transparency, right? Once you have transparency, meaning no hiding the facts, we are not going to lie. We are not going to gold plate any of the hard facts that we have on the table. And we talk about it transparently, like, hey, this is what the project is pointing to. This is what our evidence is pointing to. Then you look at, you validate or you check your fact, like, hey, what does our fact say? Like, we all once we know what's going on, we check our work as we do it periodically, regularly, and based on what our artifacts or the facts that we have on the ground points to, it's okay to change tactical direction. So we adapt our next steps based on it. Now, the biggest question out here is we say, hey, we need trust. And I'm sure a lot of the department, the teams that we are working with, this is one of the biggest challenge. Like the trust is missing. It's a fabric which is so fragile. It gets torn very often and ripped apart, right? How do we build trust? Well, Scrum Guide calls out 5 values. They say these 5 values are the lifeblood of Scrum. If your team, your leadership, if you follow these 5 values day in and day out in the true essence of it, like showing courage to put the facts to the table, showing courage to say, hey, you know what, this is we are not done with this particular feature. We are still testing it. It's not fully done. We don't want to showcase to you something which is wrong. If we show courage to do the right thing, okay, at least people will start appreciating it. Like, hey, you know what, we know we can trust the team that they are not going to lie to us. uh, Other part, like, we talk about focus. Like every sprint you want to focus on the goal for that sprint. Like, this is what our task at hand is, this is what we want to do. Let's not get digressed from there. That's another value of Scrum. And this also ties back to another problem that I frequently foresee. A lot of organizations, we have teams working on multiple projects at the same time. If you have team members working on multiple projects, it pretty much dilutes the focus of the team, right? Multitasking, context switching, how often we are in a situation where we want to get something done, but, oh man, I have to go for a meeting, I have to do this. Oh, crap, things fall through crack, right? So that's another challenge. We are talking about commitment. We are talking about respect. This is another one that I usually always try to encourage people. Like, hey, we may have difficult team members. We may have difficult clients. We may have difficult personalities. Respect people for who they are, right? You don't have to be the best of friends with them, but as long as you respect them, their opinion, be open to suggestions from each other, right? Openness is another value. So these are the lifeblood of the Scrum framework. By following these values, it starts building trust. And when you have trust in play, you will be transparent, right? You don't have to, you won't be hiding facts. So I know this sounds more like touchy-feely stuff, but it's there in the Scrum guide for a reason, because if you do not have these, you can easily say a lot of times you have mechanical implementation of Scrum. You can see it in the team's energy level. If I walk on the floor and I see a team that's doing their daily Scrum, and the team members are like, okay, yesterday I did this, today I'm going to work on that, and things, they are discussing things, and some of the other team members are totally zoned out, not listening to them. Hey, you know that, hey, they are not committed towards each other. You are not respecting your team member for the effort that they are putting in. So that's one part. If I were to quickly just call out in the shortest few sentences what Scrum is all about, you have a Scrum team which will be working together, and they work in sprints, and the sprints are like no more than 1 month long, right? In less than a month or so, you work together, try to build at least one thing end to end, right? You build a working software, and this working software should be as close as possible to release quality, or I would say, if need be, you can push it to production kind. So next sprint, you continue building on top, and like that, you keep building features. And when I talk about features, think about your features or your product like a piece of, not piece, a cake, right? You do not build your or eat your cake one layer at a time. You eat your cake vertically. Same thing with the requirements that you have. Try to get one thing done end to end every sprint. That's what you want. And whatever you're working on, number one, it has to be release quality. And second one, it has to have some value in it. At least there is something that the end users can say, hey, yeah, this looks good. I know what you have built. It may not be something that they would be able to use it, meaning like, oh yeah, I was expecting a website with where I can book the flight ticket. Hey, maybe in this sprint, we just have the website where you are able to search the flight. That's good enough. Can the customers use it? It may not be as valuable, but hey, at least the search functionality works. Good. That's what we are looking for, a feature that is usable by the end customers or end users, and they can give feedback on it, right? So that's what I would say the essence of Scrum is. And now let's move to the next one. I want to quickly talk about the roles in Scrum. There are 3 roles, right? You have product owner, the development team, and Scrum Master. Let's talk about product owner a bit. Product owner is a business side person, a person who understands the domain and upholds the vision, like, hey, what are we trying to achieve? The product owner is focusing on the goals of the product. This is what we are aiming towards. This is what the product is going to be all about, and upholds that vision. Usually you will have a group of stakeholders who would give the requirement to the product owner. The requirement might be coming from various departments like operations, marketing and sales, HR, regulatory, compliance, like that. And the product owner would consolidate them and would be ordering it like, hey, based on what has more value, I'll put those up, and things that have lower value, I'll put it down. A constant challenge for a product owner would always be like, hey, I have a long laundry list of things I would like to deliver, but I have limited time and I have limited budget. With limited time and budget, what's the maximum value I can deliver to the customer? So the product owner is a value maximizer. Some of the rules that I need for the product owner to be successful is number one, available to collaborate with the development team. Second is this person should be empowered to take decision, meaning the stakeholders, everyone should be saying like, hey, this person, as long as the PO agrees to something, will respect the decision made by this person. Good. You will have a successful product owner in that case. And of course, you need to be able to have that domain knowledge, understand how what our customers truly need, what are the challenges, so that you are bringing the voice of the customer to the team, and they are able to understand the kind of challenges that we are trying to solve for our customers, right? So that's the product owner role. The second one is development team. So we are talking about a team size of no more than 3 to 9 people, right? You can have more or less, but keep it between this. You are looking for a self-organizing team, a team that is able to take care of themselves, manage their work by themselves, and they create the done increments. So what are the other rules that we have for development team? You want them to be cross-functional, meaning they have all the skill set needed to deliver a releasable software. So if I were to put it in different way, if your team has a lot of dependencies with some external supplier or some other teams, most likely it points to the fact that your team is not cross-functional, right? So so product owner will focus on what, development team will decide on how to get it done. Right? So their job is to work together. You usually, as a product owner, you give them, hey, this is the problem I want you to solve in this sprint. And the development team will decide and discuss and decide based on the problem statement, what's the best way we can deliver it, right? So we'll talk about it. And then you have the Scrum Master. So this role is there to manage the Scrum framework itself, right? He or she would teach everyone what Scrum is all about. What are the end goals we are trying to achieve? How does the framework help you with the problems? And the other thing is Scrum Master is also accountable for removing impediments for the team. Like if there are any issues that either product owner or development team they are facing, the person would be the one who would help them remove the impediments, right? No one reports to another role over here, so it's a very flat structure. Nothing like this person reports to the other one. So that's one. And collectively, they are called Scrum Team, right? So now let's look at this framework. I will be spending a lot of time over here. So how does it work? So product owner will own something what we call a product backlog. This will be a list of pending work that is needed to be done. And periodically, the product owner, at the beginning of the sprint, the product owner, the development team, Scrum Master would come together and they would do the planning for the sprint. So for example, if you have a 2 week sprint, sprint planning is all about planning for those 2 weeks. What do you believe we can achieve, right? So the product owner will first come and give the wish list saying like, hey team, this is the product backlog. I have already ordered it. The things on the top have the maximum value. Over here, as we move down, it would be great if you can deliver these 10 items, right? I would like to get these 10 items out of my door this sprint. And then the development team will basically discuss their capacity, how much in the 2 weeks, if anyone's going on leave or we have some holidays, things like that. Based on that, we'll discuss like based on the capacity and based on the past performance, like, hey, how much were we able to deliver in the previous sprint? Can we deliver these 10 items? If not, that's when they negotiate, right? They will negotiate and they will then pull the item from the product backlog and start preparing their sprint backlog, which is going to be their plan for the sprint, right? And together, this is the time when Scrum Master would be coaching them in terms of maintaining a laser sharp focus on the agenda for the sprint planning, like ensuring that it's effective. We are not losing precious time. So they come together and discuss that, and the development team prepare the plan, which will be in the sprint backlog. And towards the end, the team will say like, hey, based on whatever we are going to deliver, what's the goal we are trying to achieve, right? So usually it's the top down, like, hey, if we are able to deliver this, this is the goal we can achieve. So it's the business goal, we call it a sprint goal. Sprint goals serve like an overarching vision for the sprint. Hey, what are we trying to achieve in this sprint? So that's the goal for this sprint. And to reach that goal, you have prepared your plan, which will be your sprint backlog. And then the development team will come together. If need be, they will work whenever needed, they will collaborate with the product owner and the Scrum Masters if they need any help with the impediments. And every day, think about it this way, since the development team are coming together and we are in complex domain, the development team would come together for 15 minutes every day just to quickly sync up and plan for the sprint, right? Plan for next 24 hours. Any questions?
Any questions? Someone else speaking somewhere. A cross connection is the first time I'm hearing a cross connection.
Sorry, I'm getting some disturbances. I'm not able to hear. Okay. So the development team will come together once every day to discuss about, hey, how are we tracking in this sprint? Like, do we think we are on track? And they will do the replanning for next 24 hours if need be. So it's just a quick sync up call where they replan for the next 24 hours or plan for the next 24 hours. So the purpose of daily Scrum is exactly that. And it's meant for the development team. So I call it always as it's of the development team, by the development team, and for the development team. So they come together and quickly plan for next 24 hours. And also in case they have any impediments or something that they believe, hey, this is the risk we are carrying and it's out of our control. We may not be able to deliver it because we don't know how to get it done. In that case, for that blocker or impediment, they'll quickly let the Scrum Master know that, hey, Scrum Master, here's a challenge, a risk that we are foreseeing. Is there anything you can do to help us? And that's when the Scrum Master will spring into action to get rid of the impediment, work with the leadership team, others to get it out of the way, right? And then towards the end of the sprint, the Scrum team will come together. That is the product owner, development team, and Scrum Master will come and sit together with the stakeholders. So based on the features that we are building in this sprint, who would be the right stakeholders or people who can give us the feedback about the features? They invite those folks over and they collectively discuss, hey, this was the goal and this is how the application is looking like right now. And if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, please feel free to give us that right now. So then the stakeholders will collaborate with them and give them the feedback about the product that they have built. Again, it has to be release quality, right? So this, we call that the working software for every sprint as an increment. So they will review the increment or the working software that has been built in this sprint and in the previous sprint. Mind you, it has to be like release quality, nothing less than that. So that means you have done all the testing, right, from functional testing, integration testing, regression testing, security testing, load testing, whatever is needed to make it releasable. So and that's when we present it to our stakeholders and get their feedback. Now the stakeholders would give the feedback. If the product owner feels like, wow, this is really important, this is a great feedback, the product owner can put it into the product backlog, and based on how good or how important it is, it can be ordered in the product backlog accordingly, right? It is also an opportunity for the Scrum team and stakeholders to discuss like the future of the product. In case the stakeholders are aware of some marketplace changes, it would be a great idea for product owners, stakeholders, and the entire Scrum team with stakeholders to review like, hey, should we be continuing in this direction? Does it make sense for next few sprint we work on these items, or should we try something else, right? So they discuss that, and afterwards, at the end of the sprint, the Scrum team comes together and talks about how can we improve upon at least one thing in our ways of working. When I say something about ways of working, it is about the process that we are following, the tools that we are using. It can be about the working relationships of the team, and it can also be about the quality of our work, right? If we start seeing that in the product backlog, we see more defects every now and then, that means we are not doing enough testing. So this is a great opportunity for the team to talk about, hey, do we want to tweak our testing so that we are able to get fewer defects moving forward and deliver more value to our stakeholders. So, and then whatever is the improvement, again, in the next sprint planning, they can bake it into the plan, like, hey, this is one improvement area that we want to work on in the sprint. So this way, the team continuously improves upon their working relationship, the ways of working. So this is pretty much the Scrum framework at very high level that I wanted to share. It looks deceptively simple, right? It does, but there are quite a few challenges that a lot of organizations, a lot of teams face. Just want to quickly call out, why is it so difficult to manage, right? Here's one of the big challenge. When it comes to, from the team perspective, building a releasable software at every sprint, that's what you want. For Scrum, you want to be able to build releasable software every sprint. In the earlier ways of ways of working, we used to have the software towards the end. And now that you have to build something like this, it's a lot of work, right? And that pretty much it overwhelms a lot of teams. Like, wow, this is too much. Well, you may want to start small, meaning take very few items, but at least do a good job at it. So that way you know how to continuously build a production quality software. Then in predictive ways or waterfall, we had very longer feedback loop. Over here now in Scrum, you get feedback very quickly. It's very short. If you are having a 2-week sprint, you are talking about getting feedbacks much more faster. And for me, it's great. Since you are getting feedback faster, it gives you an opportunity to change direction whenever needed. If I were to put it in different words, Scrum is also a framework for opportunistic discovery, where it gives you so many opportunities to discover things. What happened earlier in Waterfall is your feedback loop was so long that whatever inefficiencies were there in the system, those used to be hidden under the carpet, right? And now that you shrink the loop to no more than 2 to 3 weeks, most of the software organization, they don't follow more than 2 or 3 week sprint, right? When you shrink it down to this much, those inefficiencies that were there under the carpet, now they start surfacing up, right? It overwhelms the team. It pretty much overwhelms the team. And a lot of people think that, hey, Scrum is not working. Look at this, so many issues and stuff. Well, I have some news for you. If you look at the line over here, Scrum is not a problem solving framework. It is a problem surfacing framework. It's not going to be a silver bullet which will solve all your problems. It starts surfacing those problems for you. Yes, it's okay to be overwhelmed with those problems, but it's not okay to blame Scrum for showing you those inefficiencies. It's like Scrum is showing you the mirror, like, hey, here are the things that are going wrong in your area. Mind you need to fix it. So now start working towards fixing it, because that's exactly what we are aiming towards, and by leveraging sprint retrospectives and all the events in Scrum. If you talk about sprint planning, you talk about daily Scrum, you talk about sprint review, you talk about sprint retrospective, they are all meant to give you an opportunity to look at things, look at the facts, and based on that you take decisions, right? So that's one part I want to add. We are all used to these long-term detailed plans, right? Long-term detailed planning, assigning and controlling of the work, keeping everything on schedule. And most of the times we have loads of meetings in the organization, and we do need to prepare reports so frequently, and people get overwhelmed by that. And then you want to keep control on stuff. Now, what Scrum needs is moving away from that to something like setting the goals and the vision and the direction. Like, hey, this is the direction, that's the vision we have. This is what we are trying to solve. This is how our customers would be benefited, right? So we speak about the goals, and for that, you want to create an environment where people feel safe to speak up, right? And instead of looking at reports and meetings, you get your answer about how much has been done by just attending the sprint review. Sprint reviews over here also, you can look at how the software has shaped up, and based on how much work we are getting done sprint over sprint, we may be able to show the forecast of how what's the timeline we are looking at right now, right? We want to share incremental feedback and manage for value. If you ask Ken Schwaber, what is Scrum for? He will say Scrum is meant to deliver value. Scrum is for value delivery. That's the biggest purpose of it, right? And it is about empowering the Scrum teams. If when I said that, hey, the development team is self-organized, actually the entire Scrum team is self-organized. No one tells product owner how to do his or her job. No one tells development team how to get the releasable software. You give them the problem statement, and it happens within certain boundaries. Like, hey, we have sprint length of 2 weeks. This is the goal. We are aiming for delivering this goal in the sprint, and you need to build releasable software by then. And within these three rules, use your creativity. No one will interfere in your day-to-day work. Use your creativity and get things done, right? So we are now trying to see how we can empower the team. Now, I understand you may have a team which is not mature enough. This is where Scrum Master's role plays pivotal. It's a Scrum Master plays a pivotal role to empower the team, like coach them, help them start stepping up. if I were to use certain words for Scrum Master, we are talking about a person who's a great influencer. We are talking about a servant leader. We are talking about a change agent who's now trying to help the entire team, entire organization slowly move away from here to this area, right? And for that you need person who if who is great in terms of number one, lean agile practice, practicing lean and agile ways of working. You are talking about someone who is a great teacher, great coach, great mentor, great facilitator. You are talking about someone who understands the domain to a certain degree, understands the technology to a certain degree to be able to support the development team, and who's also understands how to transform the organization. It's a lot of effort because now you're talking about entire, not just the Scrum team, but leadership, the management, everyone coming together and starting to move in a different way. So shifting from predictive management to empirical management, right? So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover.